All right, C-Mac, it's time to talk college football playoff semifinals, and we begin on Thursday with the Orange Bowl. It's the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the Penn State Nittany Lions, the first semifinal. Notre Dame 2-point favorites, 45 the total, of course. Hard Rock Stadium in Miami will host this game. You look at Penn State. We'll start with them. Their road to get here, and it's obviously the biggest, I guess, quibble and the biggest question mark that people have about Penn State going into this game. Well, you beat SMU and you beat Boise State, two of the weaker teams in the college football playoff field, to get to the semifinal. Are you prepared for this step up against Notre Dame, who, by all indications, it's going to be a tougher opponent and a tougher matchup for Penn State? And when you look back at those two wins for Penn State, wins and covers in both games, 38-10 against SMU. But as I mentioned before the Boise game, SMU had a chance to go up 7-0. They were moving the football early in that game. They missed on a 4th and 1 that Kevin Jennings should have hit on. They moved the ball again. They got stopped on 4th down. Again, missed a field goal, actually, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And then the pick sixes happened, and goodbye. There were opportunities for SMU to make that such a different game early, and they didn't seize on those opportunities. And then in the Boise State game, you can kind of say the same thing. Here's Boise with this great
even more, I think.
Yeah, 100%, because they moved the ball so well. First drive of the game, 4th and 2. I thought Spencer Danielson got a little bit conservative. Like, this is you're a double-digit underdog, man. Like, I would have gone for that, especially knowing my kicking game was a little bit spotty. And he settled for that field goal attempt early. They missed it, of course. And again, it kind of set the tone for and it gave Penn State momentum. It fueled the Nittany Lions right away, and then they go right down the field after that missed field goal, and they punch it in for the touchdown and go up 7-0. Now, I'm not trying to say Penn State punch holes in Penn State as a team. This is a really good football team. Aller is a solid quarterback. The run game with Allen and Singleton's outstanding. Tyler Warren's going to be an NFL caliber tight end. We know that. The O-line's solid. The defense can stop the run. It's a great football team. But I think when you look at their pathway, this is going to be a much tougher challenge. And when I look at Notre Dame, I get it. Gunnar Stockton was at quarterback, not Carson Beck for Georgia in the quarterfinal victory in the Sugar Bowl. But that shouldn't take away from how good that Notre Dame defense played. They forced turnovers. They blew up the line of scrimmage. They really didn't give Georgia much semblance of a run game to speak of. I was just extremely impressed with Notre Dame. The pass rush got home. I thought against that Georgia offensive line, they handled themselves very well. I mean, you look at it, they held Georgia to 62 rushing yards in that victory.
29 carries. Yeah.
29 carries and only 62 rushing yards. And people were concerned that Georgia offensive line with all I heard about was the fucking big size advantage and the much greater beef in the trenches. The Georgia O-line over the Notre Dame defensive line, and how that was going to be a big problem for Notre Dame, and they still stopped the run. Now, some of that, maybe they had the lead, the kick return touchdown right after halftime that really gave them a bit of a cushion. Maybe Georgia couldn't run the football nearly as much, perhaps, but I think you still have to give Notre Dame's defensive line credit, because all I heard was undersized. Well, they didn't play like an undersized defensive line. In that game against Georgia. They played extremely well. I think it's one of the best defensive performances of the year for Notre Dame. A defense where at times they've given up points. They've given up big plays, but they were outstanding. Now, they'll be tested here by a very balanced Penn State offense. There's no question. When you look at the other side of the football, though, the Penn State defense, like I said, one-dimensional Boise State. Maddox Madsen's an okay quarterback. He ain't going to be an NFL quarterback. That's the bottom line. And I'm not saying Riley Leonard will be, but Riley Leonard's a guy that has got the dual threat ability. You obviously like what you're seeing. Now, it's very interesting to see for Notre Dame. I know Jeremiah Love got banged up, in that game against Georgia. See if he is going to be able to play. I think he's going to be okay. But again, I think it's a spot where the run game is so important for Notre Dame here in this game. We'll see how they fare. For me, at the end of the day, it's Penn State facing, to me at least, a tougher opponent than SMU, a tougher opponent than Boise State. I think a Notre Dame team that's playing their best football now. I had some questions going into the Indiana game because, look, they played a little bit of a weaker schedule. They roughed up some teams that, they should have beaten. They should have dominated. But they completely shut down an Indiana team that was able to be a good offensive team most of the year. And then to shut down Georgia. And yes, they didn't have Carson Beck, but that is still a very impressive defensive game, out of Notre Dame. And if they carry that over here, I still don't think Drew Aller's been the bee's knees, to steal an old man term, if you will, here in these 2 playoff games. He's been all right. He hasn't had to be great, though. I mean, they've got the lead early, and, in both games against SMU and I want to see Drew Aller in a close game, which this likely will be, and make big plays, big throws, big time completions in a close, tight ball game before I'm ready to sign off on, Drew Aller, a phenomenal quarterback. I think he's really good, but I want to see him finally with the noose around his neck here and a little tight around the collar. And let's see how Penn State plays in a close game. Notre Dame's been in a lot of close games this year. Penn State, you start to look at them, and when they've played close games, they've not necessarily been at their best. Losing to Ohio State in the regular season, losing to Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. When they've been the bully and they've gotten the early big lead like they did against SMU and Boise, they're fine. They're good in the lead position. How good are they in the trail position? Or if the game's tied, we're going to find that out. That also speaks to why this team stinks under James Franklin as an underdog. Go look at the numbers for James Franklin and Penn State as an underdog. When they're playing teams that are either on their level or just a little bit above their level. They've been terrible in these games repeatedly for years under James Franklin. Their underdog straight up in ATS record is abhorrent. It is brutal under James Franklin. As you can kind of tell, at less than 3, I like Notre Dame here. I like Notre Dame. I'm going to take them on the money line in this game. When you're talking about a small favorite like this, I don't like messing around with the point spread. I'll just go with the minus 130. Which is the best price out there right now on the money line for Notre Dame. I like the way they're playing, like the way their defense is going, and I think the legs of Riley Leonard is going to be something that is going to be a factor here in this game, because the one thing about Penn State, they got a good run defense. They did do a nice job on Ashton Genty, in the win against Boise State, and that's going to speak to some of the props that I like in this game. As you can kind of tell, Riley Leonard over rush attempts and Riley Leonard over rushing yards is something I'm very much interested in from a prop standpoint here in this game. You look at the game against Georgia, he had 14 rush attempts for 80 rushing yards. And I think his ability to run with the ball, quarterback run game, is going to be very important here for Notre Dame as they match up against this Penn State defense, which their strength is stopping the run. C-Mac, what do you think here? I like Notre Dame. I think the total I lean under, but the totals come down to a point now, 45. You've lost a lot of the value. How do you think this one goes, C-Mac? The first of 2 semifinals in the Orange Bowl, Notre Dame, Penn State.
Yeah, the Orange Bowl. I still lean under on this total. I just think both these defenses are the best of the 2 sides, especially a game like this. But I don't know if I get there with this. Let's get to Penn State. They've kind of done what they have to do. I mean, they played who was in front of them. You touched on SMU. I thought the bigger one was this one, even though they jumped out 14-0 that game, and the missed field goals and already a pick, which I talked about. Madsen had 22 touchdowns and 3 picks all season long, and I said he takes care of the ball. I mean, Aller did that. He wasn't flashy like you talked about, but 170, no interceptions. That was just a killer. And fumbles too, missed field goals. But it got tight, and the mistakes just happened. They went for it on downs, missed field goals. It was 17-10 there in the third quarter, and it just got away. But I still think they had a little bit. I mean, the yards were about the same, but I think they outgained them in that game. But Penn State's going to have to rely on their defense here and probably to get turnovers. Savannah. Like, if they don't, I think Notre Dame takes advantage of that. And we'll get Notre Dame here. Yeah, that defense was just great. 4 sacks on Stockton was great. The strip was huge. That fumble, that they threw a short touchdown, it kind of struck right there. And then after that, in the third quarter, the return, the kickoff kind of put it out of hands. And because the yardage was a little bit similar, Georgia was horrible also on third down. That was not good. I think they were 2 of 12. Yeah, so Notre Dame, that defense was excellent And at times they kind of gave a few yards, but it wasn't crazy. But the Notre Dame offense needs to be better in this game. Just a little bit. As good, man, Ryan Leonard, a straight gamer, and he's going to have to use his legs. But I think they're going to need to throw it a little bit more than he kind of did against this Penn State defense, which was solid, pretty good against Genty. He had one kind of big break. I think he had a 26-yarder, still got over 100 yards. But they're going to need to.
That was a great performance, I thought, from their run defense, Penn State.
Yeah. But if I think Madsen can throw it kind of like he did, like I think Notre Dame can have a little bit some success throwing the ball. And when I look at both these defenses, I love them both, but I think Notre Dame's just a little bit better in a game like this, which is, I think it could be tight. I think they get the job done. I know everyone, it's like Notre Dame, but I thought of that with Boise State. Man, I want to get Penn State and fade in the next game. Do you know what I mean? Whether it was Georgia or Notre Dame, it was on my mind because I think they've gotten by a couple teams and they played well. I have to give my hats off to them. But earlier in the year with those losses, whether it was Ohio State, Oregon, how about the close game with SC? I know that was on the road, but I just think in the end, yeah, I'm right with you here. I think it's Notre Dame. And I lean under. I want to look at the total just a little bit more. It's kind of low in these games, but if like that defense holds Penn State to third down like this and has a couple turnovers, man, they could really shut them down. But I don't know. Maybe this game has a few more big plays in it.
Yeah, definitely. As the props that stand out to me, 100% in this game when you look at it. It's always tough with the backs for Penn State because Allen and Singleton both get, a lot of looks. So they kind of.
Yeah, we'll get to that with Georgia. With Ohio State, because I was looking at theirs. It's, split carries always drives me crazy. Yeah.
Exactly. And they've got the same thing, which we'll talk about in the second semifinal with Quinshawn Judkins and Travion Henderson. They use both guys almost equally in the run game. And same thing with Katron Allen and Singleton here for Penn State. No doubt. But like I said, I like the props, and any props involving Leonard, make sure you bet rush attempts as well, because I think rush attempts is important. He's not always going to be able to break off, the 4, 5, 6-yard runs. Sometimes he's going to keep the ball, run it, and only get 1 or 2. So that's why I think it's good to bet not just rushing yards over on Riley Leonard for Notre Dame, but maybe rush attempts as well. A good way to go for his props in this game. And then there's one more, too, I like. If you're going to go with a receiver, C-Mac, on Notre Dame, Jordan Faison has clearly become Riley Leonard's favorite target.
The big play guy. Yes.
Yeah. He's the receiver to go with if you're looking at someone for receptions and receiving yards on the Notre Dame side.
I have to say, I agree totally with that. If you look at Leonard, it's already moved a little bit. Like, I think the line is going to keep trickling. So, I get him below 50 if you really like him. I think it's, right around 47, 48. But I've already seen the numbers start to change. It's moving up a little bit. Yeah. So if you like that, I think you get on it here early. And the attempts, I don't mind that too. Something that you don't always get with college players regular year, where you can get on that. But in a big game like this, we'll have all those props. Yeah.
No doubt. And I've only dabbled in props this year, just a handful throughout the season in college football. I know C-Mac's been posting a lot on Twitter X, and there's a lot of the props that he's been betting for college football, doing very well, I've noticed, with them as well. So definitely C-Mac, like I said, probably will be eyeing a few props in these two games. Tyler Warren, I mean, it goes without saying, but here's the thing about Notre Dame. They are better covering the perimeter in their secondary, the outside receivers. That's the strength of their secondary. Over the middles where they're a little bit more vulnerable. And obviously that's where Tyler Warren, the great tight end for Penn State, comes into play. So it could be a little bit of a tricky matchup for Notre Dame. Like I said, their pass coverage and their pass defense is better on the outside than it is over the middle. So it probably means Tyler Warren's in store for another pretty productive game. He's just such a go-to guy for Drew Aller in that passing game. And I'm not sure Notre Dame's as equipped, over the middle to slow down the passing attack as they are the outside receivers. So Tyler Warren props, I wouldn't argue with that either on the Penn State side over receptions or receiving yards for him in this game.